What is up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining me as always are my two great co-hosts, Fede Perez and Ralph Hannah. And guys, we're heading into obviously the middle of the month. Obviously, competitions are underway in a little country in Colombia. I don't know why I'm saying a little country, but obviously a big country in Colombia. Obviously, we also have the Clausura starting today, actually, at the time of recording. Obviously, the games are back to see who will be crowned Paraguay League champions, as we saw Libertad win the Apertura. We're going to talk about what's going on there. We're going to talk about what's been going on with the national team, as Gail Barcelotto was basically doing interviews all across the media in Paraguay, talking about his team, the future of the national team, and so on and so forth. So I'm excited about this. Let's get straight into it. Fede Perez, man, how are you? I mean, I think we could talk, obviously the Paraguayan team, the men's side has been a bit disappointing over the last few months, maybe even years to say, but at least now, even at the time of recording, the women's team is starting to get people excited. Maybe they have World Cup fever. I don't know, man, but I think people are really starting to dream. Obviously, baby steps, still a long way to go, but the women's team are really thinking of a maiden voyage to the Women's World Cup.
Hopefully they can make it, Roberto. Yeah, we're definitely going to talk about their journey to this next World Cup. Hopefully they make it there. They're right now playing in Colombia. They played 3 games already. They won 2 out of those 3 games. So it looks like possibilities are really there for this team. Obviously, talk about some of the girls that have been standing out in this tournament. This is a very important tournament for them, not just because of getting to the World Cup, but because it is an opportunity to show their best stuff right now. And like we talked about it several times here, I mean, the women's football in Paraguay is just growing and growing, evolving and evolving. And we've been looking forward to this competition for a while now. I think we've mentioned it for over a year and a half now here in Guarani Vision. So yeah, the Copa America, obviously it's a thrilling tournament to look forward to. It's already happening. We got to talk about it. And we definitely have to talk about what's coming up ahead, the Clausura, with a couple of changes. Also, the coaches are going to finally be able to make 5 changes, just 5 subs, just as they make in the international cups, as they can do in Libertadores and Sudamericana. That was not being done here in Paraguay. It was actually a weird call. You saw some of the small teams not really agreeing on that situation, but it finally is coming true. And there is a couple of other details going on, but we're going to get into details of that, of everything that's coming up in this Clausura. Obviously, teams are signing big names, and others are kind of losing their big stars also. So we're going to talk about what could happen in this Clausura that's coming up. The stakes are high for a lot of these teams.
Definitely are. It's really win or bust for a lot of these teams. As we switch gears to Ralph. I mean, obviously we spoke about the Copa America, but obviously this Clausura is very much important for a lot of these teams because it definitely defines their year. It defines really how they view as success or failure. And I think for a lot of these teams, they really want to show a good impression to do well in this Clausura.
Yeah, the only team maybe that doesn't have too much pressure is probably Libertad. But that said, because Libertad got knocked out of the Libertadores, maybe there's still some kind of feeling that they have to put in a good show. But they're the only side that's guaranteed a place in continental competition next year at the moment. And then you have the relegation battle. I mean, Emiliano and Taquaria are struggling, but then 12 de Octubre aren't far behind after finishing bottom in the Apertura. They have to keep an eye on it because they could get dragged into that relegation race. And then you have all the teams that have changed, either changed coaches or made big changes in personnel. So like Resistencia put in 8 players, and Nacional are trying to fight for a bit of Sudamericana. Sol are trying to find what to do because they couldn't score goals. Yeah, there's everybody has something to fight for. And of course, the big guys, Olimpia Cerro and then Libertad Guarani are going to be, I imagine, vying for that title. And let's see if we get something a bit closer than last year. And just a quick shout out that I'm in Miami, back from that Paraguay trip, and I saw somebody yesterday with an Olimpia shirt on in FIU, so that was pretty cool. I haven't seen many. I've never seen a Cerro shirt here, except when I'm wearing it. but I've seen two Olympia now, I think, since I've been in Miami. And also Diego Reskin, who we've got the interview with him. For those people that haven't seen it, go check it out. Diego Reskin captained Naples. They're in the final now of the NPSL. They won last night, penalty shootout 3-2. I got home just in time for the extra time. It was pretty dramatic. They held on, and so good luck to him. We'll see who they face in the final. They beat Miami Beach FC last night, but that could be another trophy. If you remember in the interview, he's won a lot of titles down here in South Florida.
Well, best of luck to Diego, and let's hope he adds another title to his silverware with his team. So obviously, let's switch gears to the big news that's happening, not in Paraguay, but in Colombia, all the way in the north, I think it's northwest. Yes, northwest of the continent of South America, where the Copa America Femenina is occurring. Obviously, the tournament that it will determine who will qualify for the 2023 FIFA Women's World Cup in Australia and New Zealand next year. For those that maybe are familiar of how it all works, 2 groups of 5 teams. Paraguay are in the group with the host Colombia, Ecuador, Chile, and Bolivia. The other group consists of Brazil, Venezuela, Argentina, Peru, and Uruguay. From those groups, the top 2 teams from each of them go to the semifinals, with the 3rd place team from each group go to a 5th place match. The winner of that 5th place match will advance to the Interconfederation playoffs, while the semifinalists of those 2 top teams from the group will determine who qualifies to the Women's World Cup and the Summer Olympics. Got to remember, Paraguay have also never been to the Summer Olympics from any side of gender from soccer since 2004. So there is also that opportunity there. Obviously, 3 spots are open for the South American teams to go to the Women's World Cup. We got some spots for the Olympics as well, and the Pan American Games, where people don't kind of forgotten. But yes, you can also qualify for there too. But as we speak right now, literally about an hour and a half ago from Paraguay's 2-0 win against Bolivia, goals from Ramona Martinez and Rebecca Fernandez, puts them to their 2nd win in the tournament so far, which puts them at 6 points thanks to their win against Chile a couple days ago, 3-2 win, and following off from their loss against the host Colombia, where they did battle it through. They actually had tied Colombia at one point in the game, only to end up losing 4-2. So as it stands at the moment, and obviously we're talking at the time where Chile and Ecuador are still tying 0-0, Paraguay are currently in 2nd place with 6 points, 2 wins, and 1 loss. Ralph, I'm going to go to you on this one first, because a lot of people obviously lean to you more on the women's game. Obviously, Fede has had the fortune of being able to cover a lot of these Paraguayan players who play domestically, but Paraguay are currently in a good spot to get out of their group. Obviously, the game against Ecuador will be the crucial one. They get a little break from now on until that game against Ecuador. The game will be on the 20th, so it will be next Wednesday. So obviously, from what we saw from Paraguay, they're really in a good spot to advance to the semifinals. And, you know, obviously for a team that obviously is in growth, like we have spoken about over the last couple of years, would be a remarkable achievement to do so. But needless to say, this team obviously still has a lot to improve. But so far, they've done what they've been told by beating the teams that they needed to beat. And now it's up to that big game against Ecuador to really determine who qualifies to the semifinals.
Yeah, that's right. It's in their hands, and that's the position they wanted to be in after 3 games. The start wasn't as bad as maybe people assumed that, oh no, they lost 4-2 or they were 4-1 down at one point to Colombia, and it was a Fanny Galto free kick that made it 4-2. But it was Jessica Martinez that's got that amazing free kick early on that I think, you know, people are even talking about a possible Puskas nomination for that, because it was so far out and she hit it so cleanly. But that was actually not such a bad result, losing 4-2 to Colombia's hosts, because the last Copa America Paraguay had lost 5-1. So you could already see that actually there's a bit of progress, that they're closing the gap, because here the powerhouse is really our Brazil and Colombia, right? Argentina is not as strong in the women's as they are in the men's game, whereas Colombia is much stronger in women's than there are men's relative to South America. So to play the hosts and go down 4-2 wasn't too bad. The big game, Chile, they got off to a great start, and it was Rebecca Fernandez, who plays her football in Chile, so has a lot of understanding of that, of her rivals. she got one of the goals, and that was a game where Paraguay were pretty much, I thought, controlling, but just at the end it got a bit nervy as they had to hold on for the draw. Hold on for the win, the 1-goal win. And then today was a strange game because the coach, Marcelo Frigerio, he rested Jessica Martinez, who is, as we're saying, the star of this team. She's been with the team since she was a teenager and has always been the bright hope for Paraguay. Now she's 23, she's at Sevilla. So she was rested, and then Paraguay hit the post 3 times in like 4 or 5 minutes. Then by 10 minutes, they were 1-0 up, and they were all over their opponents. And you thought this is going to be easy, but they just couldn't find that second goal. Bolivia even hit the bar in the first half, and you were starting to worry about, are they letting it slip? In the end, they got the win, as you mentioned, the 2-0 victory, but it did feel maybe that was a bit more hard work than they would have hoped. But definitely overall, they're in the right position. Going forward, they're looking really exciting. I'm enjoying Jessica Martinez, we mentioned, but I'm really enjoying Ramonita. Ramonita's probably showing that she's the best player at the moment that's still in Paraguay. She's the one that I think somebody's going to pick her up after this tournament. Fede as he's been lucky enough to watch her a lot play locally, so he knows just how good she is. But then we've seen defensively, they're still maybe a bit shaky. They don't have the organization or the individual kind of athleticism one-on-one that we saw that against Colombia, I think, to really see out those games against the big teams. But so far so good. And going into Ecuador, they played Ecuador in Quito in the lead up to this. They drew 1, they won 1-0. I think that was Jessica Martinez again who scored. That's just how important she is to this team. So they have that, they have that kind of confidence going in that they've done well against Ecuador recently. But let's see if they can make it through to those semifinals, and then they're one game away from the World Cup. So that would be a huge moment.
Hey, I think we're on the road, right? I think we're on that way, especially after these first 3 games. Now we get a break. We get our star back. Jessica Martinez, we really need her on top of her game. We need her 100%. Ralph was saying she's 23 years old right now. I mean, she's still so young, right? She has so much ahead of her, but she started out so young. She started out, I think, with just 13 years old, coming in first division here in Paraguay, and then leaving the country, playing in Brazil, playing in Spain, playing in Europe for so long. And you see the surroundings, and you see the players that are around her right now. And most of this squad is really playing in Europe. You have so many players in Brazil. You have so many players that are outside of the country. I think, I wouldn't say it's now or never, but it is a really good time. I think it will be a great opportunity for these girls, and they really want to make it. Roberto, I think they feel as they're going against adversity, just because they feel kind of, that they don't get the attention that they should in this country. I've even heard it from our star. I've heard it from Jessica Martinez also, like the press hasn't been around them. They were training here for more than a month, getting ready for this Copa America, and we didn't even see that many interviews in the preview. Just now, as the tournament is happening, even people couldn't watch that first game. People had to go on YouTube because it wasn't shown on national TV. So it is those kind of things that we've always talked about, that these girls kind of feel that they're not being appreciative, and it sucks that it has to be that way right now in Paraguay. But hopefully, with them having good results, with them having big games in these kind of competitions, they catch people attentions and they catch people respects. I mean, everybody here in Paraguay knows who Jessica Martinez is. Everybody knows who Piraju Martinez is, just because of so many moments in the women's football that she stand out, and so many tremendous goals that she scored with the national team and also with the different clubs. I mean, it was to nobody's surprise if people have seen her play before, that amazing goal that she scored from free kick. I mean, she's done it several times in different clubs, so it was no surprise to me, but it was a tremendous goal, and hopefully it is on that Puskas list, and hopefully it does get a chance for a trophy or something. But hey, I want to see these girls make it. I'm seeing a couple of stars on this team, not just Jessica Martinez, Fanny Auto. I'm loving her for the level right now. I'm loving what I'm seeing from Alicia Bobadilla, our goalkeeper. Also, that's a very important part of the team. She was already champion in Argentina with San Lorenzo, so she has the experience also. And we have a big goalkeeper, which is not normal in women's football, and she's huge and she's very important. She's made a couple of important saves so far. And yeah, I might be worried about our defense. We don't have that many tall players, so sometimes when you put the ball up there, we do have that trouble. I remember saying that after we played the U.S. Last year, that pretty much every ball that they would put up there, they would head it into the goal. And we're not seeing that much in this Copa America, just because I do think that here it is a bit more equal, right? Like the levels are a bit more fair in that sense. And we're going up against Bolivia, we're going up against Chile. Chile was at the last World Cup, and hey, we beat them. So why not get thrilled with what these girls are doing? We're closer to the goal, I believe, right now, Roberto, and the girls are doing a great job in Colombia.
And not to mention that Chile has Christine Endler, obviously one of the best goalkeepers, if not the best goalkeeper in the world. So for them to score 3 against that is a remarkable achievement. Just a little bit of a stats that I put into the chat, guys. Obviously, this is a team that 9 of the 23 players are in Europe. 17 of the 23 are abroad. And also a really interesting one that I think you guys would be interested of. Only 7 of the 23 players are above the age of 25. So that is a remarkable stat, that this is still a young team. This is a team that hasn't even hit their prime yet. So obviously they're still, what's that?
No, that I'm totally with you on that, Roberto. I think we're going to see more of these girls. Like in the next competitions, we're probably going to see the same names, Ralph, just because of what Roberto's saying. We have a very low average on just how old these girls are on this squad. So I'm really happy about that. It's just not about this competition itself. It's also about the future, right? I mean, you're seeing that here in Paraguay. The football is evolving, and we're seeing more and more young girls getting time on the ground. So I'm just thrilled to see more and more players coming out here in Paraguay, like Ramonita Martinez that you just mentioned.
Yeah, it's the development. Sorry, just to build on your point, Roberto, of the young players, is the development has got so much better in Paraguay in the last 5-6 years as they start to bring in the professionalization, which is still growing. There's only 6 professional players per team, or that's the minimum, and a lot of teams are doing the bare minimum for now. But that's in contrast to before there was only 3, and then before that there were none. So that's the older generation weren't as professionalized as now. So that's why we're seeing a lot of the younger players come through. But also is Marcelo Frigerio is really the first time that Paraguay's invested big in a foreign coach, right? For a long time they used the same coach from a Paraguayan, but now it's like, no, they're putting some money behind somebody to come in and to try and do everything. And change everything. Roberto is throwing down the stats today in the chat. So you're saying, Frigerio was the coach of Equatorial Guinea at the Women's World Cup right back 2011. Wow, okay. So he's been around a while. But this is Paraguay are making these efforts and making this development. And it was a real shame about that first game that Fede mentioned that wasn't being televised. I wrote to one of the dirigentes, the directors, kind of asking him what's going on. He's like, no, I'm working it out. We're working it out, because they were disappointed from the Paraguayan FA that it wasn't on there. Now the games are being shown on TV there, which is great news. And for us here in the US, for anybody who's interested in watching, it's all on VIX, the free app, which is in Spanish. And that's great. I get all the coverage there. I think it's on Fox too in English. Yeah, so we got Fox Sports in English and VIX for free streaming in Spanish. So go watch it. Go check them out against Ecuador on Wednesday.
Absolutely. And more than anything as well, like even like Fed had mentioned, it's a good point, by the way, it was 9 players above the age of 25, my mistake. But yes, even then, it's still a remarkable achievement so far for what Paraguay has been able to do. If you remember, Jessica Martinez, I don't know if you guys saw it a couple of days ago, she was saying that, a lot of these players, they're not even earning 40 mil, which is like 40,000 Guaraníes, which is roughly about, I'd say not even $5. Yeah, $8, not even double digits. And for that for a team that's vying to go to the World Cup, that is absolutely adversity at its best. Even when you're looking at it, like you said, Ralph and Fede, like this team, like really at the 11th hour, only decided to now start broadcasting the matches on TV or YouTube. It's like, it shows that they're going through all this adversity, and yet they are still, breaking glass ceilings and continuing to achieve. So, this is a team that is in progress. I mean, obviously the dream for them is to make a maiden World Cup. I mean, that would be something that would be full of optimism for a country that, whatever senior level that they're at, hasn't been at one since 2010. So for them to then go to a World Cup like this one would be tremendous. It'd be huge. It would be a wonderful achievement for them, even if they're not obviously
It would
favorites.
be hilarious, Roberto, to see
It would.
national
would be
team go to
hilarious.
the World Cup and not the men's will go to the World Cup. When in this country, everybody's after the men's national team and not much after the women's game.
And we don't have to paint it as a sad story, but it really is. Like, how the hell is this possible? Now, obviously, the World Cup has expanded, so obviously more opportunities are given to the women's game. But even then, it's still like, this is, like you said, Ralph, like only a couple players on each of the Paraguayan teams are professional, and the other ones are just basically amateur. So yeah, it would be a huge achievement for them to do so. Now, obviously, I don't want to put my prediction hat, but I do need to at this point, and I want what you guys think, because obviously Paraguay would need to beat Ecuador at the moment to qualify to the semifinals, but the issue would be that they will probably take on the powerhouses of either Brazil or Argentina. Now, obviously, Paraguay and Brazil have always played each other. They've also played Argentina. I'm not too sure about how the recent record has been, but Ralph, I'll go to you on this one. I mean, how do you fancy the chances of Paraguay? I mean, is it really too much of an ask for them to qualify directly to the World Cup, or do we think that this is still a team that could indeed achieve it, but via the playoffs?
I think achieve it via the playoffs is more likely. I mean, let's think if they're not going to qualify first from the group. Colombia will wrap this up for sure. So they're going to end up probably playing Brazil in the semifinals, and Brazil is really a powerhouse, just like they are in the men's game. The difference last time the men played was 4-0. I'm sure it will be similar, if not more, when they play. That would be a really tough game. But then by losing the semifinal in the third place playoff, that becomes a final, because the winner of that goes direct. The loser would have to go to the Intercontinental playoff. And they could end up against, I don't know, Venezuela, Argentina, who are also very strong. But I think they would feel they might have a shot at that one. And there's less pressure in a way, because again, like I say, even if you lose, you go into the Intercontinental, you get another bite. The real big pressure, I think, is this Ecuador game, and to not lose it. We'll see where things fall with Ecuador-Chile. That's in progress right now, but it could be a case of a draw puts them through, depending on results. So if Chile hold on and win, then I think they could do that. So we'll see. That's a real big game, but I think realistically, to get through the semi-final or even the third place, it could be hard, but we'll see. We'll see how it all falls down. But I think the most likely chance is going through the Intercontinental as the fourth place team. Let's hope. That would be amazing if they've never managed fourth place in the Copa America, so that would be a record in itself. And then, worst case scenario, the fifth place, coming third in the group. But I think that they're going to be gunning for that semi-final. They got a great chance against Ecuador.
Yeah, I'm with you, Ralph. I think they have a chance, especially if we keep our stars healthy. And thankfully, I believe the calendar also kind of worked out for us in that sense. Go against the toughest team in the group just right in the first game. Try to get your points against a big team like Chile. We beat them, and now we did what we had to do against Bolivia. Now you get your rest, and now you get your final against Ecuador, and now comes your bigger challenges, right? Now you have at least two big games ahead of you if you beat Ecuador, obviously, and I think they can do it. And if they beat Brazil or one of those big teams, everybody's going to be talking about Paraguay, obviously. But at least fight those games. I mean, I don't want to lose by 4-0, like Ralph was just saying. I hope they can be a little bit more competitive in that sense. Just like we were against Colombia. I mean, I was waiting for a big result from Colombia, and it ended up being a 4-2. Obviously, we do need to get better in defense, just because in those two first games, we did see 6 goals in Alicia Bobadilla. So yeah, we do need to get better in that sense, especially against the powerhouses. But a 4th or 5th place, I think would just be great for these girls. But if you beat Chile and then you beat Ecuador, you got to make it to the World Cup, because you beat 2 great teams in the group stage. And if you beat those 2 teams, I'm going to be really excited about what could happen in the semifinals.
Obviously, I want to be optimistic and hope that they do indeed qualify directly, but I would be very happy, like very, very happy if they even do it from 3rd place. Like, you know, they could play a Venezuela or maybe an Argentina if it all works out well. And I think they can definitely compete. But yeah, I think from a realistic standpoint, I think if they do indeed beat Ecuador, then the playoff is probably where they can be in the worst case scenario. I think the win against Ecuador would definitely make the picture much more bigger. Now, obviously, we have to see who they play in the playoffs, because it could be an African team, could be an Asian team, or a North American team. The CONCACAF tournament is also happening at the time, so we'll see who they play there as well. But no, I think we can feel optimistic. Obviously, now they get a week rest against before they play against Ecuador, so we'll definitely have to see what happens there. And I don't know, guys. I feel optimistic. I hope that we can come into a show this time in a couple of weeks and say, hey, our team have made the World Cup. Although it's not the men's, but hey, it's the women's, and they've done it for the first time. I mean, that would be remarkable, and hopefully also allows a lot of Paraguayans there, Fede, of course, you being based there, who have seen this kind of growth of the women's game. Now they finally get into the mainstream.
Hey, obviously, it's not going to be a celebration like it was when a men's team makes it to the World Cup. You're not going to see people in the streets, stuff like that yet. But it is going to be a huge step for women's football here, and especially, just like I said before, to catch people's attention. I mean, most of these girls, they don't get the attention during the year when they play their local leagues. When they're playing abroad, you don't usually see their goals. You don't really know much about their lives. You don't really know much about their backgrounds. And that's the reality with people here. You know, they don't really know much about the players that are representing their national team. So it is an opportunity also for that to happen. As long as they keep getting the results, they're going to catch people's attention, as long as they're doing well. And look, a lot of people didn't know who Rebecca Fernandez was before this tournament, and she's scoring pretty much in every game so far. So she's catching people's attention. Obviously, Piraju Martinez also, and other players like Ramonita, Limpia Fretes. I'm loving several of these players that are on this national team that I think can keep on just growing and growing. And yeah, I'm going to celebrate, Roberto. If we make it to the World Cup, I'm bringing back my Albi Roja jersey on this.
We'll pop the champagne. We'll pop the champagne if we need to. We'll do it on the show.
I put it away to the next World Cup, but I'm taking it back.
Yeah, I mean, Ralph, I like your last thoughts on this one. I mean, hey, Paraguayan football needs some sort of optimism after not being able to make it to 3 straight World Cups. Let's see if the women's can do it this time.
Yeah, that's what I think. I mean, it's just as Fede mentions, it will just bring some more attention. It will get people a bit excited and interested in something that probably has passed them by. I mean, if we think of the growth of the women's game internationally, like the last Women's World Cup was huge. I think everybody I knew was watching it in like here in the US, in Europe, that kind of thing. But in Paraguay, it wasn't such a big deal, because they weren't there, right? Which makes sense. So I'm sure there will be much more excitement. We might see people getting up early because it's in Australia and New Zealand. So we're going to have some strange time zones there. But I just think it would be such a great opportunity for the team. And then what it does is like a circle, right? A virtuous circle, whereby then the Paraguayan FA are going to start putting money in, because you're going to see more interest, the TV, the possibilities, some marketing in there, and then you can help grow things locally as well, because you start to see some of those benefits.
Absolutely. And also for these players, they get the opportunity to, you know, some teams snap them up and they go and play abroad, be it in South America or in Europe, or even in North America and other places as well. So let's hope for the best, and hopefully then in a couple of weeks we can come and celebrate the women's game much more, as we've always talked about, as we switch gears now to the other gender, to the men's game. and talk about the big tournament that's occurring right now in Paraguay, is the Clausura. At the time, obviously, it started today with Resistencia taking on Sol America. At the time of recording, Resistencia winning 2-1 against Sol America, but obviously, this is a tournament where I think for the big boys, we look at what's going on this weekend. Olimpia taking on Guarani on Saturday, Cerro Porteño taking on 12 de Octubre, and Libertad taking on Sportivo Ameriano. Really, I guess you look at the fixtures, how it is, guys, and Fede, I'll go to you on this one because you have teams up there that are obviously fighting to win a title, to really save their season after what happened in the Copa Libertadores or the Sudamericana, losing and bowing out so early. You got teams also fighting to not get relegated as well. Obviously, Copa Paraguay is also starting as well at the time of recording. So just want your thoughts, really, your 2 cents on what you expect from this Clausura and, from the teams that are competing in it.
Yeah, well, Libertad was the first champion, so all the big teams have to go for this second title of the year. Definitely Olimpia, Cerro Porteño, Guarani also, but obviously the pressure is always on Cerro Porteño, on Olimpia to win it, especially after Cerro Porteño was just so close, right? I mean, they made more than 50 points on this last tournament, and it just wasn't enough against just almost a perfect campaign from Daniel Garnero's side, and they clearly earned it, and we'll see if they can do the same thing in this Clausura. I would be surprised if they can do exactly the same thing, just such a perfect tournament. I think it's going to be a lot tighter this time around, especially because most of the teams or all of the teams are actually going to have their focus only on the local league. So it is going to be up to maybe who has a better roster even, because it is going to be a very tight calendar. I was looking at this calendar that we have, and a lot of midweek games. So it's going to be really hard for those teams that are not going to have a lot of players available. If a couple of injuries could really be a problem. That actually happened to Cerro Porteño last time around. And look, Cerro Porteño did not bring that many players in. They have Brian Zamudio, they have Pachi Carrizo, but they were humiliated in Libertadores. So they really got to show something in this Clausura. I don't think people are with what I said, that, hey, we made 50 points. We're happy that we had a second spot in the Apertura. No. I think people are going to demand a lot of this Cerro Porteño. On Olimpia, I think people are a little bit calmer just because everybody knows the situation in Olimpia. They don't have that much money right now. They have debts. They have trouble with that. And they pretty much got to sell players. They're not selling anything right now, but they can't bring much either. They can't bring players in much either. But, hey, those last games of the Apertura, you saw the best out of Olimpia. And Olimpia, I think, are going to be ready to fight it. And you've seen the best out of Delis Gonzalez. They're getting players back. And I'm really hoping for Olimpia to have a good start in the tournament, just as Guarani. I mean, these are my candidates. Obviously, Roberto, and I'm going to put Guarani up there also, just because of the young talent they have. Huber's been putting in young players lately, and I'm loving some of these guys that are coming in to this new team, and obviously the new names also. I was looking at some of the players that are coming back to Guarani. Nestor Camacho from Olimpia. I mean, this is an experienced player. He's going to try to get a lot of game time here next to Fernando Fernandez, a top scorer. He's going to have a lot more players around him to hopefully build more goals. I think that was the big debt in Guarani last time around. So they look a bit stronger. I mean, those are the teams that you're expecting to make a run for it. I don't think Resistencia is going to surprise again. I don't think we're going to have a Tacuarí breakthrough. I don't think we're going to have a General Caballero surprise us in this second half of the year. I mean, I think those teams are going to be in their reality. They're going to try to fight for a spot in Sudamericana maybe, but the championship is going to go to one of those 4 teams. I don't think it's going to get out of there, Ralph. I don't know if you think something differently, but for me, the big surprise could be Guarani really in this Clausura.
Oh yeah, okay. Well, I agree with you on the four teams, because, like you say, that they're not distracted with the continental competitions. If you look especially at Guarani and Olimpia in Apertura, they started very slowly, so I don't think they'll have that issue here. Also, you mentioned in the intro about the 5 subs. So the 5 subs is going to help those teams that have deeper squads, because then they have better players to bring on. So again, it's going to help those big 4, I think. The team I was really impressed with towards the end of the season was Olimpia, though. I mean, Olimpia just kept digging out these results and finding these wins. And if you remember in that last game against Guarani, because funnily enough, they ended the season against Guarani, they're going to start it against them. They played pretty much their B team and they won 2-0 anyway, because at the time they were focused on Sudamericana. So I thought they're really building something a bit interesting there in terms of organization and a kind of winning mentality. But Libertad are very hard. Libertad have only lost once in the last 27 league games. And that was the crazy 4-0 against Cerro, when Chiquiase surprised everybody with 3 at the back, and he surprised Garnero that day. But that's worrying, right? 1 game in 27. No one can seem to find a way to take points off them. This weekend, Ameliano are not the team that will be taking points off them. But in week 2 is interesting. We get Olimpia Libertad. The last Olimpia Libertad game was close, 1-0 to Libertad, but it was also a very feisty game when Zarate injured Julio Enciso. That was the last time we saw Enciso in Paraguay playing. So it'll be interesting to see those 2 go head to head back again, which is week 2. But then it makes it really difficult for Olimpia, just staying with them, because they have Guarani and then Libertad, and it's a midweek game. It's going to be tough. And it's going to be a strange season because they're taking a break for the World Cup. So that's something to bring in. There's going to be this weird break just for the World Cup, even though Paraguay haven't qualified. So we'll kind of see what happens there, if that affects anything. Do one of them try and go for a run in the Copa Paraguay? Probably not. I think traditionally the Copa Paraguay, if they do well, they'll keep going, right? But if they don't make it, they don't make it, kind of thing. That's what we've seen traditionally. I don't think I've ever seen a team say, "Oh, we're really focused on the Copa more than the league." But yeah, I think those 4 teams and the ones that need to be maybe a bit concerned is Sol de America. They lost both their strikers, Verdun and Borja. They brought in Santiago Salcedo, who's the all-time top goal scorer and is a great. He has a great affinity with Sol because his parents, one of them is a Sol de America fan. I can't remember if it's the mom or the dad, but one of them is. And when he went there last time, he scored like 30 goals in a year. But he's also now almost 41. And Sol de America brought in Cholo Guiñazú as the new coach. He used to play in Libertad a long time, but he's never won a game as a coach. He had 6 matches with Atlético Tucumán, didn't win a single game. So it's a big risk. They're bringing in this really old striker, having lost the 2 younger ones. They're bringing in this brand new manager. So that's kind of interesting. And then General Caballero have lost Santiago Salcedo, but they've also, Marabel looks like they're losing him. So that's another team as well. If in terms of the teams that could be struggling, look at Sol and General Caballero. Apart from the ones that we already saw were struggling, your Emelianos, Tacuary, and probably 12 Octubre have found it really difficult. And then I'm going to stop there because there's so much more to talk about, but maybe we should go and talk a little about the under-19s, because that's going to be a new rule that's coming in. If somebody wants to explain that, because it's a bit complicated.
Yeah, absolutely. Fede, if you want to explain the rules, because it's a new one, and I think it might be one that could serve as a positive for these teams.
Yeah, totally. I don't know if you guys can help me out just how many minutes they actually have to play, because the change in this rule, because we actually had this already a couple of tournaments ago. The change this time around is that you don't really have to start the under-19, right? You just have to complete 800 minutes during the tournament, just as Ralph is saying right there. And that's what you have to do. You have to divide those minutes into different games. You can put them in the second half. You can put them in just the first half. That depends on the coach, especially with 5 subs. I think it's even easier now to put them in, take them out. You can even have another under 19 there in your bench and put him in for the one that's coming out, and then you're completing pretty much the 90 minutes on a game. But hey, this is an opportunity more than more than forcing the teams to put in young players on the pitch. I think this is motivation for the guys, for the young players to be ready. And look, the next World Cup is just so far away. Who knows? Maybe one of these guys that's coming in as a new player right now in this Clausura, just as this new rule is coming out, might be in the next World Cup starting for the national team. Who knows? I mean, that could end up happening. I mean, the last bright star that came out from Paraguay was Julio Ciso, and Julio Ciso played his first game with just 15, 16 years old. So you're expecting to see those kind of players now with this rule going around. Yes, obviously, some coaches do not like it. Some coaches are saying, hey, the guys that have to be out there, they got to earn it. And when somebody's telling you that you have to put a player under 19 on the ground, you're kind of being forced to do that. But hey, they're making this for a reason, and it actually worked out in other countries. And it doesn't speak well about the way we're working here on the youth leagues. That's why we're pretty much forcing teams on the first division to do this. But it is an element, Roberto. It's just another way of trying to find new players, and we got to sell here in Paraguay. I mean, that's what the league is also about. It is a product anyways. And right now we've just sold a player to Europe. We sold a player to the Premier League. So why not have many, many more come about, just as Julian Ciso did? He's just the best example of, and his story that just happened in Libertad. Hopefully we see many, many more like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's obviously something that obviously can attract these players, that obviously allow scouts to have a better view of what's going to happen, because I think that's how you get those consistent playing minutes. It's that, for all these scouts, they're always looking for the next Bright Gems, they're looking for the next NCSOs or whatever. And so they need to get those opportunities. And I think, for forcibly being able to do that, kind of really, it doesn't allow their development to really go intact. Okay, yes, all good for them to play and everything, but for them to force it rather than do it organically. I mean, if you're good enough, you're good enough. I'm of the believer of that. But yeah, I think maybe this might change things,
But the clubs aren't doing it, Roberto. That's the issue here in Paraguay. The clubs are not working with the young players. That's why even the small teams, Roberto and Ralph, the small clubs, they have to pretty much loan players from the big teams and use them for their under 19 rule, just because they don't have those kind of players, Ralph. They don't have players ready for the first division.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, firstly, this rule is much better. As we were talking, the rule before that you have to start under 19, we just saw like so many subs get burned in like 15, 20 minutes as these poor players like had to come on and go off. And they hadn't done anything wrong in most of these games because it's the first 15 minutes. So it's much more natural to bring on a young player towards the end of the game when it could be that nothing's at stake, because maybe you're winning easily or maybe you're losing by a lot for some of the smaller teams, but at least you start to get that experience. It's a hard one of whether it will work or not, because the last rule didn't work, because since they brought it in, Paraguay didn't qualify for the World Cup, so we can't say it's worked there. What I think it could start to do though is I'm hoping the way it's done this way is they start to rotate a few players, because what was happening before is the clubs were focused on one player they were going to try and promote and just keep that person. And hopefully this way there's less risk to it, because like I say, you can bring these players on towards the end. What if it's a game and you're like Guarani and you're winning 4-0, then just bring on like all 5 under 19s, like make sure you have enough and bring them on towards the end. Maybe that's an exaggeration because there's only 7 subs, but that kind of idea, you can bring on 1 or 2 and give people a chance. It is though a struggle for the small clubs. I was just running through, as you guys were talking, the list of under 19s registered, and a lot of clubs don't really have one, so they're just scratching around to find one. You have, in the case of Guarani, who I mentioned, they might actually use Nelson Aido Valdez's brother, Diego Aido Valdez. He's on the books. He's the possible under 19, so that would be exciting. But a lot of the teams are struggling. They only really have one player they can use, in contrast to a Libertad, a Guarani, a Cerro, who would all easily be able to field maybe 3 or 4. In fact, Chiquiase did it in one of the games, the last game of the Clausura. I guess there were at least 3 under 19s in that match. So yeah, it's easier for the bigger teams, but I think it's a much better way of structuring the rule by allowing the minutes accumulated and not this idea of a forced start every single game.
I actually think, Roberto, that it's about, the time in football has totally changed. I mean, before you had players coming into the first division with 21, 22 years old. And right now you have market, you have scouts that are coming to the country, and they're looking for 15, 16 years old. They're not looking for 18. They're not looking for 19, 20, 21. Those players are old already. And the way to make money in the market is selling those young players, just like Brazil does, just like Argentina does. If we want to have a better league, if we want to have a better product, if we want to have clubs with a lot of money, they have to start selling their players when they're really young. And for that, you have to work on that. And that's kind of what this rule is, also the spirit behind it, I believe.
Yeah, and of course there is that risk as well that these clubs also can sell them on the cheap if it doesn't work out. So there is that kind of factor too. But yeah, I agree. I think the development of youth, and I'm not doubting Paraguay. I think they've done a good job relatively in being able to promote youth, as we see. But it's just the way that they do it and how soon that they do it. And obviously, you always have a bright gem out of all of the diamonds that come in Paraguay. But yeah, I think, like you said, it's just the way that it's done, how soon, and also how willing that these teams are going to take a risk on these guys. I think that's the main thing. So we're going to see what kind of youth movement, we could say, is going to be done for these teams. And obviously, I'd like to switch gears. Obviously, I love doing these type of things. Predictions. What do you feel is going to win the 2022 Clausura tournament? Fede, I see you. Yeah. No, you're first. You go first. Age before beauty, so go for it.
Okay, I'll go first then. Championship wise, I actually think Libertad is going to be way relaxed on this situation, on this Clausura, just because they've already got the Apertura. So, and I think the big motivation for this team was the Libertadores. I mean, they have so many stars on this squad. I kind of think they're going to be relaxed on it, to be honest. And I think they're going to be laid back, and I think the other teams are going to take advantage of this situation. I think it's going to be between Olimpia and Cerro Porteño, to be honest. And I'm going to say it in that order. I think Olimpia can take it. I do think this level that I'm seeing from Derlis Gonzalez, the level of that midfield that's just growing and growing with Gomez, what I'm seeing in that defense. Also, Olveira was one of the best goalkeepers in the last league also. And I think Julio Cáceres also kind of deserves it, just because of everything that he's done so far has just been really well. He's pretty much done a great job in Olimpia, promoting players, getting players that weren't on their level back to their best level, and like Richard Ortiz, Derlis Gonzalez, just like I was mentioning, and even more, Otavalo just resigned them. So I think in all these problems that Olimpia has, I think they could actually take this Clausura, but it's going to be between Olimpia and Cerro Porteño. They're going to have to pressure, and those, I believe, are going to be the first and second team in my prediction. Ralph, what do you have?
I agree in the sense that you haven't mentioned Cerro. I'm also not. Well, you mentioned Cerro. No, wait, that you haven't mentioned Guarani. Sorry, the top 4, because the thing I noticed with Guarani, I was looking at some stats that what they couldn't do last year was take any points off the big teams. They lost both their games to Cerro, both their games to Olimpia. They managed 1 point against Libertad, as Libertad were kind of struggling with the titles. So I think for Guarani, it's a stretch too far. The difference to you then, I think is more between Olimpia and Libertad. With Cerro, there's something like the whole kind of culture of the club has changed over these last few weeks with the big defeat to Palmeiras and the losing the league, or not winning the league. I wouldn't say losing, because they were never leading, but they didn't manage to make up the gap. And then they've sold Alan Benitez. It looks like Rodriguez is going. Morales won't be back yet until the end. Marcelo Moreno he's not working for them. There's been some issues off the field, possibly with people like Carrascal that people are talking about. Luis Fariña left and he wasn't very happy with the way he was treated. Like the whole kind of ambience at the moment is a bit negative, and I don't think it's a great start. I'm sure they will come good, but I think maybe we might see them get to a too slow a start. So I'm looking at it between Olimpia and Libertad. I kind of echo Fede's points on what Julio César Cáceres has done. He's done a really great job. I think getting back Hugo Fernandez in the middle is going to be a nice kind of cover for Richard Ortiz, right? Because Ortiz can't always play every game, so you're going to have Fernandez in there. I think Montenegro on his day is better than Walter Gonzalez. So those are the two that were kind of the fourth striker behind Derlis, Recalde, and Paiva. So they've strengthened in that area. But I don't want to copy you. I don't want to copy Fede, so I'm going to say Libertad. I think Libertad still is just so strong. And what they really did very well is signing Pablo Aguilar, I thought. Because Libertad's one thing I still think about them is that Barbosa can sometimes make these big errors in big games. And that gives them, maybe leaves them a bit too exposed. And with somebody like Aguilar in there, if he plays alongside Barbosa, he's going to help him. Or if he plays with Vieira, I think he'll also help him. He's a really experienced player. Great 10 years I think he's had in Mexico now. He's just won the league as well with Cruz Azul in 2021. So I think that was they didn't sign many players Libertad, but I thought it was spot on the person they chose. So I think Libertad go back to back and it'll be fighting it with Olimpia.
I'm gonna have to be the one that has to break the tie, because I also see Libertad and Olimpia fighting for it, because I think Cedro, like Ralph had mentioned, I think the environment and the situation is just a little bit chaotic at the moment, and I think they'll go into a slow start. I think they'll win on the weekend, obviously, but I think, heading into maybe the more bigger games against your Nacionals or Guaranis or Sol America, they might stumble a little bit, and I would not be surprised if they do so. But having said that, I think this Olimpia side is very much motivated after getting out of the Sudamericana in that way. Yes, it was very disappointing of them to do so, but I think that motivates them heading into this league. And, it's weird, to think about this, guys. It's like this Olimpia side over the last decade or so, like they always find a way to get something. It doesn't have to be even in the league, but it could be also domestically. They find a way, crisis after crisis. I think they're still undergoing a situation where they're not in the best spot. I mean, Olimpia are definitely not in a stable manner at the moment, but they always find a way to do so. And I think that gives them the edge just a little bit against Libertad. Having said that, I think when you still have a team like Guarani fighting for it, I think you see surprises from a Nacional or even a Sol America. They might do something, but I think I'm going to have to side with Ralph on this one. I think Libertad will just edge it out just based on that. Like you said, they brought in Aguilar, brings in a lot of experience there, helps tighten up the defense just a bit more. You have a lot of players there that have won titles all over the world. I think it gives them the edge, but I think it'll be a tight one between them and Olimpia. I mean, again, it could be a flip of a coin for me, honestly, but I do see both of these teams fighting for it in this Clausura. So I'd say Libertad first, Olimpia second, Cerro Porteño third, if I had to give a top three. So hopefully we do see a very competitive Clausura in comparison to what we saw last year as well, where it went all the way to the end with Guarani taking on Cedro and Cedro winning in that dramatic fashion. Hopefully we see that again this year, but now with two different teams, in my opinion, and I would think we're all in agreement as well. And hopefully Maria, obviously, who's not in this chat as well, might be obviously signing for Olimpia in this one, that they could win another title this year. So guys, I mean, I think this is a great way to close another great episode of Guarani Vision. We definitely covered the topics that we needed to. Really good discussion on all fronts. So it's a good way to close it for myself, Roberto Rojas, Fede Perez, and Ralph Hannah. Thank you so much for listening in. See you soon.